Hey guys, I'm Beats, and in today's video I want to show you how you can use multi-band saturation, and I want to show you some multi-band saturation plugins that you can use when mixing drums. So stay tuned for that. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you. In today's video I'm gonna use a beat made by David from Hitman Production. He's a really cool guy, he's really talented, you can check him out. I'll have a link in the description. Let me play you the beat.
Hitman music.
Now I'm gonna talk to you about why you should use multi-band saturation, especially when mixing drums. Most of the samples nowadays are from online, from drum kits, from Splice and other services like Splice. The samples are already processed, EQ, saturation, compression, reverbs, all sorts of crazy things, and I don't like extra processing. What I like to do is use saturation on my drum bass. I use that all the time. That's what I use to glue the drums together. I also use like a bit of compression on the drum bass, but what I use most of the time is saturation on the individual drum. Sometimes in the context of the mix, an EQ might not work. Let's say you want the snare to be brighter, the kick to be punchier, the hi-hats to have some really nice top end, and the EQ is not working. You can really bring some subtle character to the samples by adding some saturation. I'm gonna show you my favorite plugins that I use for these sorts of things. The first one is FabFilter Saturn. As you already know, I'm a big FabFilter fan. I like using their EQ, the compression, the reverb, and Saturn is another plugin that I use a lot. Saturn is really easy to use, but you can get really complex sounds with it. You can dive deep down into the modulation and get some really crazy effects. I'm not gonna show you that today. The second one is Vertigo VSM3. This is one of my recent purchases, and I have to say that I really like using it, especially on the tubas, but I also like using it on individual drums. Next one is Ozone 8 Exciter. This one is a classic. You can also use the Neutron 2 Exciter. So the basic principle behind using multi-band saturation is just to affect the main frequency of certain samples. For example, the kick, the bass of the kick is the low information. With the snare, you can add some really nice body to it. You can add some really nice snap to it, and you want to affect just those certain frequencies that are predominant, that are really important for the samples. For example, with the kick you can saturate the low mids. With the low mids saturated, you can reduce the low end a bit. That makes room for the 808, and you can really make it punchier. It can cut through the mix without adding any level. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Now that we added some saturation in the lower mids, we can remove some of the bass to make room for the 808. Now let's use the Saturn on the snare. Let's say I want to emphasize this section right here. So now with the help of multiband saturation, we help the snare to cut through the mix. Let's move on to the hats. So I've added even more top end. I have the band at 10K, pushing the saturation. These are some extreme settings you will probably need to use like something more subtle. You can also blend the signal with the processed, so the effect is not that obvious. This is how you can use Saturn. With the Vertigo, you also have low band, mid band, high mids, highs, and full. You can use this similar to how you use Saturn. The controls are a bit different. You can even add like more snap to the kick. Let's go to the highs with this third harmonic. With the distortion solo, you can monitor what you're doing, which is really nice. The top end is a bit strange on this specific kick, but you can control it with an EQ after the multiband saturation. Let's try this on the snare. Let's say that I want to add more highs to the snare. Instead of using an EQ and boost the highs, you can saturate the highs. And as I did with the Saturn, you can add that punchiness, that beefiness to the snare by using the second harmonic and saturating the lower mids. This is how I use the VSM3. This is the basic principle when it comes to adding saturation to the drums. Now I want to show you how you can use the Ozone 8 exciter on the drum bass. So like on Saturn, like on VSM3, you have a few bands. Here you have the liberty to change the position of each crossover. So you choose what you affect. You can solo the bands. With the first band, I want to process just the really low end of the kick. The third one, the higher mids, and the last one, the top end. You you have a lot of options when it comes to saturation type here in the exciter from Ozone. With the Ozone 8 exciter, you can blend the process signal and you can get really subtle effects. So this is how I get my drums to sound really punchy with a really nice top end, with really nice mids, without using an EQ. Try this out and let me know how it goes for you. I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, please subscribe, hit the notification button, drop a like, leave a comment with suggestions. I usually reply to every single one of your comments. Follow me on Instagram, follow me on Facebook, and see you guys next week. Cheers.